really excited for my chat today with Kolton Kozlowski. Kolton, obviously, we're good friends, so really excited to have you here today. Thanks for making time to connect.
Thanks for having me.
Um, so, my first question for you is what Enneagram type are you, and how would you describe it in your own words?
I am an Enneagram Type 1, and I would say ones are uh, principled, moralistic, sometimes a little zealous even, deep sense of right and wrong, and very driven to um, see out what they see as their mission, kind of against all odds.
All right. Thanks for sharing. Um, could you talk a little bit about how you discovered your Enneagram type and just what that journey was like for you?
Yeah, I was between a few types. So I'm definitely an intense person, and so I think that guided me to narrow it down to kind of the really kind of driven types. And I was really kind of stuck on three versus one for quite a while, and did some reading on both. Both types are very kind of success oriented or passionate or motivated. And so that resonated with me a lot. And I think what really the distinguishing factor for me was some of the things I saw in the ones, basically desire for fairness. So treating fair, a fair society, a fair world, a fair community, as a really high goal and ideal, as well as being kind of personally motivated to see out my own contribution to that, versus some of the other types, especially three that I was looking at, were a little bit more driven by external acknowledgement, or external appreciation or something like that. I didn't resonate as much with that as I did with the thought of just kind of like trusting myself, and wanting to work for, I don't know, the good of just what I think is the higher good, not for any one external thing, more kind of what feels right, internal to me.
Thanks for sharing. I'm hearing like a little bit about obviously this internal idealism, and also this piece about fairness. So, could you just describe what fairness means to you?
Fairness is having the right outcomes, the right consequences for that match the action, right? So to me, that would be if you treat the world positively, if you interact with people positively, you're going to get some kind of positive feedback loop. And same thing for negativity, disrespect, things like that, that you kind of get what's coming to you. That there's a little karmic justice in the world is certainly something I feel sometimes is true. I also feel that sometimes is not true. And I think that you can see a lot of unfairness in our world. Inequality, access to opportunity, just basic living standards, all of those things, are very unequal in the world, and I find that just kind of inherently unfair. And so the quest to remedy that, to increase, opportunity, access, to take care of the world, that's something, I feel very strongly about, and that motivates my personal mission a lot. And to treat, all humans, all creatures, all conscious beings, with kind of respect and dignity, is something that I think is very important, and that you're never above anyone else. You should never feel truly above any other person in particular. And if you can live by that, or at least do your best to make your best effort at living by that, then you are being a good steward of fairness and justice.
Thanks for sharing. I really appreciate that. So, how do you use the Enneagram in your daily life, or what areas or when do you see it come up for you?
I think one big one for me is reflecting on the way that the one type can descend into uh, a negative space by being overly critical. So that is something that read about kind of discovered through here there's a fine line between being driven and perfectionistic and being overly critical, especially when you're trying to get others to do things. It comes up a lot for me at work. It'll even come up to me for me in just like my day-to-day life with friends and family. Hey, I think you should do this, push you to do it, and push too hard, or someone feels like they're being disrespected, or I'm being condescending. That's something that I've heard and had to reflect on at times in my life as negative feedback for myself because I was being overly critical, or I was being critical without constructive feedback there. So trying to toe that line of not being overly critical, knowing where that line exists, and to stay on the kind of healthy side of that boundary. I think it helps me manage my own stress, my own investment in other people's and other projects, lives, and things that are outside of my control, letting them be outside of my control. I think that has been an important reflection. It also, I think, helps me be more effective with the things that I do care about, that I do really want to push for, because motivating and pushing are important things for me, are skills, strengths of mine. But you always need to keep that in check and directed in a way that is going to ideally add energy to others, not detract from it, not bring someone down, not be so critical that you demotivate someone.
Hmm. Is there any specific way in which you are able to identify when you're moving into that like shoulding space, like, and maybe feeling like you're being a little too critical either of yourself or others?
Yeah, I think there are times when I have to question my own motivation. I have to stop, take a step back, and say, why am I so fired up about this? Why do I feel so passionately about this? And kind of assess if the justification matches the matches the intensity, matches the intent. So if the means if the ends justify the means, or not, right? Is, I think, a question throughout history that we ask ourselves when we're kind of more of the zealous type, more of the reformer, more of the idealistic advocate style people. I think often run up against that line of, am I doing this for the right reasons, or has this become ego? That's, I think, an important one to reflect on. Or has this become relatedly and more specifically about me trying to project that I know better than someone else, that I am better than someone else. I think always stay in check, and always being honest with yourself when that does come up, because both things can be happening, right? You can be advocating for something you really believe in. You can also be getting like a little like warm fuzzy ego bump by being the person who's making that strong forceful statement that XYZ should be a different way. It comes up a lot in our, I think, political arguments, and just the way we discuss, how to have a better society, which I think are, again, valuable discussions, are useful things to challenge, right? I think if we all live in complacency all the time, you're not making the world or yourself better, and I believe that very strongly. But you must be doing it for the right reasons. And I think there is a time and place when I have seen myself push past that line, and now I'm doing something. Now I'm pushing too hard, or I'm advocating for something that either I wouldn't do myself. I'm not willing to take a stand. That's something that that's a good metric, a good rule of thumb. The old golden rule. Would I do as much as I'm asking someone else to do, is an important one. And then just leaving ego at the door, basically, that would I do this even if there was nothing in it for me, if there was no positive consequences, even if there would be a negative consequence of going for something, which sometimes there is when you're when you're pushing a boundary. Is it worth it, basically? And would it be worth it if there weren't any accolades that came along with it?
Hmm. So even like on that note, what is something people often get wrong or don't understand about you?
I think I would say I get the impression that people believe that I think I'm really great, that I have this very elevated sense of self, or that I think I could do things better than people. I think that that comes out sometimes. That basically all variations of that kind of you see someone acting in a way that you determine is condescending, and therefore you get defensive and say, hey, that must come from a place of egotistical overreach. When I think often I'll be the first to admit I don't know what I'm doing in many capacities. I'm not good at many things. I struggle with all kinds of all kinds of feelings of inadequacy all the time, right? And uh, it's neither a shield for heavy insecurity, nor is it an actual genuine egotistical framework that makes me want to push for things, that makes me want to be critical of other people or offer advice, even when it's not always appreciated or not always wanted. It's genuinely the way that I think is much more, you know, here and now is the baseline, and how could it be better, right? There's a lot of me projecting what could be a better, a better world, a better place, a better human condition, and then trying to bring about some of those things wherever I can, knowing that I can't do it by myself, right? So I do lean on other people. I do lean on my friends, my family, my coworkers, to help get there. And oftentimes it's not that I think I can do it better myself. I think we often need to work together and rely on each other more. But I think one of the downsides, or one of the potential weaknesses of being a one, of having that kind of internal belief and kind of moral righteousness, is you don't always check your humility as often, or as genuinely as you should, because you're just like, yeah, I'm right, let's get on to the next thing, let's keep going. And you're not necessarily, even if you're doing internal work to process, is this right, is this wrong, because I do a lot of that. I do a lot of internal struggling with those things. You're not externalizing most of that struggle most of the time. And so I sometimes think that other people assume that to me I have it all figured out, and that's definitely not the case.
Thanks for sharing. I'm hearing like two parts of this that really speak to the heart of the one, which is that beautiful question of like, could it be better? And seeing the opportunity to say, I want to improve this system, this process. And then I'm also seeing this other part around like, what does that look like to let people in to that struggle, that question that I'm facing internally, which it sounds like you're trying to be really aware of, which is cool. Um, Last question for you. If we were to see the world through your eyes, what would we see?
If you could see the world through my eyes, you would see a really a really wide swath of things, I guess. I'm not hyper focused on any one thing, any one person, any one community. I think that is how a lot of people see the world, or that's my interpretation of how I think a lot of other people see things. The way that folks communicate about what's important to them. There are a lot of things operating at a very high volume and high visibility in my life. So one way that comes through is like being, a fairly political person and a fairly engaged in kind of the zeitgeist of like, what is here now? Why are we here? All of the existential questions, just like kind of roiling to an extent, but ultimately, I don't think imposing that could take people to, I think, an anxious place, and I think it has taken me to an anxious place at times. I would say at like where I am at now on my kind of personal journey and development, it is much more, those important questions of why, of how, those bubble up, and I think give me ideas or inspiration to tackle something. And it might be opining on something totally in a different part of the world, totally off of the normal news circuit or something like that, and just really wanting to share with a friend, some thing going on in the world, either a positive story. I'm really big on renewable energy and sustainability, so positive stories of those things. I love to just bring up out of the blue, even though people will be like, "Why do you care about this like this startup in this other country?" It's like because I think that like those ideas are amazing and valuable, and I think that's what pushes us forward and makes. I think about progress a lot. I think about the possibility of not having progress, of regressing as a society. And I just think I see things and think about things societally, whether that's all of human civilization or that is our country, state, city, we at a pretty frequent level compared to I think some people are much more focused and narrowly zoned in on their community, how they can make their community better. I could certainly do a better job with that, but I think my general framework is a very wide lens, which introduces, I think, some kind of like topics, ideas, aspirations that are maybe not that common, not that normal, but could be, I think could be very relevant, could be very, helpful. Ultimately, I think at the end of the day, I am want to be a very helpful, productive, engaged member of society, take advantage of all the privileges that I have to, uh, do something genuinely like worthwhile, genuinely good to the kind of moralistic side of the one, and as a mostly secular, spiritual but non-religious person, that is often how can I improve improve human life, and take care of the earth, make this journey of consciousness and our physical existence, our lives, a little bit less suffering and a little bit more thriving and building and succeeding together.
Thanks for sharing, Colton. I can tell you brought like a lot of openness and courage to the conversation. So I appreciate all of the points you brought up, and I feel like it was probably very relatable for a lot of other types ones and folks in general. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.